We all went to school, so we were all brainwashed into the school model. Here's what people who send their children to school don't understand.
There's no con involved, then it's not a sacrifice.
No, that's
right?
wrong.
That would be like me. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that school, K through 12, or colleges are a perfect institution. I think there's a lot of wasted time. I'm very progressive, but I think that the ideological leanings of the school are insane, right? That 13-1 is barely even a real number because you know that one conservative is not like a gun-toting MAGA loving. That's like true. A liberal conservative, right? That's a guy that would have voted for Clinton, right? The one conservative, right? So there are definitely problems with the school. I just don't like the idea like, okay, there are some problems. I'm going to throw all of it out. We're going to ignore all the pros, and we're going to get so ideologically invested in our particular solution that we can't even name a single con because I still don't know a con from the homeschooling thing. And I can think of three off the top of my head. My sister was homeschooled for her entire life. I know tons of cons off the top of my head.
What are the cons?
One is that you have a parent that's stuck in the household. Two is that you have to go out of your way to find extracurricular groups to sign up for.
The parent in the household is not a con to me.
Okay. Well, you're not. Well, that's because you guys had a lot of money. For parents where both parents need to work, that's unfortunately for a lot of people, that's not an option. Right. So one is
it's not a con to homeschooling. It's a barrier, but it's not a con.
The con is that it's a job that you don't get paid for. You're a slave to your kid, which is kind of okay. It's part of like being a parent to some extent, but a lot of parents...
I reject that characterization.
Okay, well, for the people that can't afford to have a single person, a parent, staying in the household until the child is 18...
Go down the list.
For a lot, that's one. The second one is you have to go out of your way to find...
extracurricular activities for your school,
like it could be CCD, it could be church stuff, it could be whatever.
Sure.
Thankfully, my parents were religious. I say thankfully, I'm an atheist now, but like so they had an easy community to kind of like enroll their kids in the Catholic class, or my sister in class, or whatever. And then three is support can be difficult. If at least back when they did it 15, 20 years ago. Hold on.
It's changed a lot.
Sure, it's probably changed a lot, but it could be like if you've got questions about like a certain curriculum or which books are the best or whatever, it could be hard to find that support online. Whereas if you've got issues with schools, there's a whole infrastructure built out. And then four is not as big a deal, but things related to special education requirements can be really, really complicated in the home if you're not ready to be like a full-time caretaker or meet like the individual needs of a child. Maybe your child has a speech impediment and you don't know how to train them. You'd have to take them to a speech pathologist instead of relying on school, right? Maybe they're asking for career guidance and you don't know the answer. Your child's like, oh, I want to be a mechanical engineer when I grow up. And it's like, okay, well, I got my degree in writing. I have no idea like what guidance I can give you. So those are like four off the top of my head that are like challenges.
I went to high school and I had my drama class because I really liked drama and I really wanted to be an actress. And everybody at the high school, literally like everybody at the high school said, you can't be an actress because nobody ever succeeds. And frankly, the gal who taught acting, pretty girl, had spent a bunch of time in New York, clearly had not succeeded because she was teaching high school drama in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So of course her paradigm was nobody succeeds because she didn't succeed. So just because your parent doesn't know how to get you somewhere doesn't mean that the school does. And in fact, there are plenty of people in schools that dissuade children, like I was dissuaded, from pursuing acting, which is why I ended up at Duke University and then had debt because I was studying something that I eventually didn't do. But the other thing that I just have to say, we live in a culture right now that believes in the school model because why? We all went to school, so we were all brainwashed into the school model. So your very definition of education is, well, you have to perform well on a test. That is not the true definition of education. And the idea that it's a terrible burden to have to be enslaved to your child, I will say this. We also live in a culture that our schools have taught us that sacrifice is the ultimate evil, that you should never sacrifice anything because you can have it all. And that's a lie from the pit of hell. And the fact is that sacrifice is the highest good. And the only reason that our culture has survived and that this nation has been created is because they understood that the free exchange, the free sacrifice of self for something greater than is the greatest good that we can have. And that's the basis of our economy. It's the basis of capitalism. It's the basis of growth. And frankly, it's the basis of family. So when you have a family, you learn that you sacrifice for your family because in the sacrifice, your true value comes out.
And that's
you build
great.
Your value.
That's great. But when you say sacrifice, that implies a con. That's all I was saying. If you can't afford to stay home and take
because the definition that we have been given from our schools is that sacrifice is evil. Sacrifice is not evil. Not a con.
Sacrifice by definition, if there's no con involved, then it's not a sacrifice.
No, that's wrong.
That would be like me giving my wife a $500 certificate to some restaurant and be like, look, I sacrificed for you. Get the my back. That's not a sacrifice. It doesn't mean anything. I didn't give anything up to do that, right? Sacrifice by definition implies that you're giving something up. If you've got plenty of money and you can stay home.
But it's not a con.
We're playing exotic language games to say that there are no cons involved in sacrifice. A sacrifice, by definition, is a pro on one side and a con on the other.
Then you can't call it a con.
Do you have the sacrifice to go to the gym?
You can't call it a con.
Do you have the sacrifice to go to the gym? Is there a con to going to the gym?
There's a sacrifice to everything, so you can't call it a con.
I'm going to keep asking this question. Is there a con to going to the gym? Is it painful? Do you spend time doing it?
Okay.
There are cons to it, but there are pros too. You're healthier, you look better.
So you can't just call it a con. It's disingenuous to say sacrifice is a con.
You would say there are pros and cons. That's what we were saying before. That was Adam's initial question, I think 2 hours ago, was what are the pros and what are the cons? Just because something might be on the net good, there's still going to be cons involved.
Sure.
Right? Sure. Okay.
Net good.
Sure. Also, I think it's important to note, you mentioned having this really bad drama teacher. All of us have had bad teachers, I imagine, right? All of us have probably also had, hopefully, at least one.
We've had good teachers and bad teachers, yes.
Exceptionally amazing teacher.
Right, but we tend to glorify the school and say, but school is net good. And my view is school is net bad.
Okay, but the people who don't go to school probably are doing
point is, I think that different people will say, well, there was a net positive and there was a net negative. I think this is the whole fundamental question I was asking. What are the pros and cons? Because I don't think that there are all pros of doing homeschooling. I also don't think there's all cons of going to actual school.
Right. But of course my viewpoint is net
bad
good
for schools.
Net bad for school.
How old is your youngest kid?
17.
Okay. I think you guys should just swap lives for a day. And your kid should go to homeschooling with Sam, and kid should go to Destiny's kid go to home learning.
I wish Pat, that I could convince you to try it because it is the most amazing.
I'm sure there
and
are.
You don't understand. Here's what people who send their children to school don't understand. They fundamentally can't understand the sacrifice that they are making.
I mean, you say that, but then on the other hand, too, I was a lot more lukewarm to the idea until Adam started asking about the socialization stuff. And I feel like there's a lot of socialization that you're undercounting for your children. When he asked you, like, what kind of friends do my kids have? And your first answer was, well, he's a 2 million follower account on TikTok. In my opinion, that's actually one of the fundamental driving forces in our society today that is destroying children's lives.
Yeah, he doesn't believe in TikTok. My point is
he
that
might not believe in it, but it is 2 million followers.
I think you're just mad that he has more followers on TikTok than you.
Only because my accounts keep getting banned.
Exactly, bro.
No, but getting suppressed.
It's because you went to homeschool, you went to school, and you hung out with the wrong kids.
Let me clarify that my point with that is he's an extreme extrovert. He has a ton of friends everywhere. Like he goes.
Listen, here's let's transition to a different topic. Here's what I will say.
I don't say homeschooling anymore because school is child abuse. So my son is an extreme extrovert. He's got 2.5 million followers on TikTok.
I'm talking about in real life.
Sorry, I disagree with almost everything you said. Sorry, I'm just.
What do you wholeheartedly disagree with Sam on? And you have an 11-year-old. So